Millionaire humiliates hungry girl by throwing milk at her, but the horse saw everything. She only wanted a little milk, but received contempt and was drenched in front of everyone. The horse, who for years had carried the weight of arrogance, refused to continue serving cruelty. In that moment, the entire town understood that even an animal could recognize injustice. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. Eagles Ridge was a place where time seemed anchored at some indefinite point in the past. The colonial architecture houses, cobblestone streets, and the immense mansion at the top of the hill formed a picture-perfect postcard that hid deep secrets. There, for more than 3 decades, Augustus Montgomery had dictated the rules of the social game. He wasn't a mayor or an official authority. Augustus owned almost everything. The largest coffee-producing farm in the region, the only supermarket, the transportation company that distributed local production, and various properties scattered throughout the town. His power, however, went beyond material possessions. He owned the fear that silently circulated among the residents. On that autumn morning, while the sun was still rising behind the mountains, Connie was preparing bread in the family bakery when she saw the girl for the first time. Small, with disheveled brown hair and worn dress, she timidly approached the back door. "Ma'am, do you have an old piece of bread you could give me?" she asked in a tiny voice, almost a whisper. Connie felt her heart tighten. The girl couldn't have been more than 8 years old, and her almond-shaped eyes revealed hunger and abandonment. Instinctively, the baker grabbed a fresh bread roll and extended it to the child, but her husband Anthony's hand intercepted the gesture. "We have nothing to give, girl. Go away," he said dryly, avoiding looking directly at the child. When the little one walked away with her head down, Connie confronted her husband. "How can you be so insensitive? Do you want to lose our bakery? Have you forgotten what happened to Jack from the pharmacy when he helped that family of migrants? In less than a month, Augustus arranged a health inspection that shut down his establishment. We can't risk it," the girl continued from door to door. At the general store, at the fabric shop, at the barber shop. Everywhere she received the same response, negatives disguised as flimsy excuses. "We're out of rice. We don't have any more milk. Come back another day. We're out of change today." People averted their eyes, not out of contempt for the child, but out of shame for themselves. It was an unspoken agreement in Eagles Ridge. Nobody helped the destitute, nobody contradicted the order established by Augustus Montgomery. At the other end of town, in the imposing mansion, Augustus was having his breakfast on the veranda. At 65, he maintained the proud posture and penetrating gaze that intimidated anyone who dared to contradict him. While reading the newspaper, he observed his favorite horse, Thunder, a purebred white stallion grazing peacefully on the well-kept lawn. "This animal is worth more than many people in this town," he commented to Teresa, the housekeeper who had served him for more than 20 years. Teresa simply nodded, as she did to any statement from her employer. She had learned long ago that disagreeing with Augustus Montgomery meant trouble. The news about the girl wandering around town asking for help reached Augustus's ears before noon. It was Oliver, the local bank manager, which actually belonged to Augustus through front men, who informed him during a routine visit. "She's just a hungry child, Mr. Montgomery. Perhaps we could—" "One child today, a family tomorrow, an invasion later," Augustus cut him off. "We've seen this happen in neighboring towns. They start by accepting beggars, then come the idle, and soon the town is overrun by chaos and violence." "But she's just a child," insisted Oliver, in a rare moment of courage. Augustus's gaze hardened. "Are you questioning my judgment, Oliver? Should I remind you who approved your loan for your daughter's college in Chicago?" The manager paled and backed down. "Not at all, Mr. Montgomery. You're right, as always." Meanwhile, the girl continued her pilgrimage. Having no success in the downtown stores, she headed to the more remote houses. It was late afternoon when she reached the residence of Ernest Sullivan, a 70-year-old man who lived alone in a simple house on the outskirts of town. Ernest had been Augustus's horse trainer for many years. He knew every animal on the farm, especially Thunder, whom he had trained since he was a colt. But after a disagreement with his employer, when he refused to use harsher methods in training, he was dismissed without any compensation. Now he lived on a small pension and the silent respect that a few still devoted to him. When he saw the girl standing at his door, he didn't hesitate. Unlike the others, Ernest had nothing left to lose. "Come in, little one. You must be hungry." The girl, distrustful after an entire day of rejections, hesitated. "You don't need to be afraid. My name is Ernest. And yours?" "Lucy," she replied almost inaudibly. "Well, Lucy, I have some vegetable soup on the stove and a piece of cornbread. It's not much, but it's warm." While the girl ate eagerly, Ernest observed her features. There was something familiar about her, but he couldn't pinpoint what. Perhaps it was just the expression of helplessness he had seen on so many faces in that town controlled by Augustus. "Where do you come from, Lucy?" Between spoonfuls, she told her fragmented story. She was an orphan. She had lived in a shelter in the neighboring town until it closed due to lack of resources. The children were distributed among institutions, but Lucy escaped. She didn't want to go far. She had hope of finding a relative in the region. "I have a photo of my mother," she said, taking a crumpled photograph from her pocket. "She was born around here. They said I have uncles, maybe even grandparents." Ernest took the photo carefully. His heart almost stopped when he recognized the face in the faded image. It was Claire, daughter of Jerome, a former employee at Augustus's farm. Claire, who had left many years ago after a confrontation with her employer, pregnant and desperate. That night, while Lucy slept in the only bed in the house, Ernest stared at the ceiling, immersed in painful memories. He knew exactly who this child was and why her eyes seemed so familiar to him. He also knew that helping her meant confronting the most powerful man in Eagle's Ridge. In the hill mansion, Augustus also remained awake, restless. The girl's presence represented a threat to the order he had established. Worse yet, rumors indicated that she had found shelter precisely with Ernest, his former employee, and one of the few who had dared to challenge him in the past. "I'll resolve this tomorrow," he muttered to himself, as he watched the moon illuminate the fields where thunder rested peacefully, without imagining the role he would play in the events that were about to unfold. The news that Ernest Sullivan had taken in the girl spread quickly through town. The residents were divided between silent admiration for the old trainer's act of courage and fear of the consequences that would certainly come. No one doubted that Augustus Montgomery would take action. The next morning, Lucy woke up to the smell of fresh coffee. Ernest had improvised a mattress on the floor for himself, leaving the bed for the girl. Seeing her wake up, he smiled with a tenderness he hadn't felt in a long time. "Did you sleep well, little one?" Lucy nodded, still shy. "Can I help with anything, Mr. Ernest?" "You can help me water the plants if you like. Then we can take a walk around town. I need to buy a few things." As they walked through the streets of Eagle's Ridge, Ernest noticed the curious and apprehensive glances from the residents. Some turned their faces away, others greeted them discreetly. At the bakery, Connie, contrary to her husband's wishes, put 2 extra loaves in the package that Ernest bought. "For the girl," she whispered, with a complicit smile. That small act of kindness didn't go unnoticed. Across the street, Sebastian, Augustus's henchman, was watching attentively. At the Hill Mansion, Augustus received Sebastian's report with an impassive expression. So old Ernest not only sheltered the girl, but is also parading her around town. And Connie from the bakery is already feeling brave enough to help? "Yes, sir. And there's more. I heard that Ernest has been showing an old photograph to some people. It seems to be of the girl's mother." Augustus narrowed his eyes. An uncomfortable memory crossed his mind, but he quickly pushed it away. "I want both of them here, today. Do you want me to bring them by force?" "That won't be necessary. Send a message. Say I have a proposal to resolve the girl's situation. Ernest is proud, but he's not foolish. He will come." When the message arrived, Ernest felt a chill. He knew well the man he would be dealing with. For a moment he considered fleeing with Lucy, but he knew they wouldn't get far. Augustus had eyes all over the region. "We need to go, Lucy. There's someone who wants to meet us." "Who, Mr. Ernest?" "The most powerful man in this town. Don't worry, I'll stay by your side." When they arrived at the mansion, they were led to the back garden, where Augustus was waiting for them. Seated in a wicker chair, under the shade of a century-old mango tree, he looked more like a kind grandfather than the tyrant he really was. "Ernest, my old friend, it's been so long. And this must be young Lucy, am I right?" Ernest didn't respond to the false enthusiasm. He remained firm, holding the girl's hand. "What do you want, Mr. Montgomery?" Augustus's smile faltered slightly. Straight to the point, as always. "Well then, I heard about this young lady's situation and would like to help. I have contacts in Denver. I can guarantee a spot in an excellent boarding school. All expenses paid, of course." "The girl stays with me," Ernest replied dryly. "Be reasonable, my dear fellow. What can you offer her? You live in a simple house with a minimal pension. What future will she have?" "A future with dignity." The tension between the two men was palpable. Lucy, though small, perceived that her fate was being disputed. She squeezed Ernest's hand harder. Augustus stood up, his countenance now less friendly. "I believe you don't understand the gravity of the situation. This girl has no documents, no legal guardian. The authorities might consider this a kidnapping." "The authorities might also be interested in her mother's story," retorted Ernest. A heavy silence fell over the garden. Augustus's eyes, once calculating, now emanated contained fury. "Be careful what you insinuate, old man." At that moment, Teresa, the housekeeper, approached with a tray of lemonade. Upon seeing Lucy, her eyes widened in recognition. The resemblance was undeniable. The same almond-shaped eyes, the same face shape. A tremor took hold of her hands, making the tray dangerously wobble. "Something wrong, Teresa?" inquired Augustus, noticing the employee's disturbance. Nothing, sir," she stammered, placing the tray on the table. But her eyes remained fixed on Lucy. Teresa timidly extended a glass of lemonade to the girl. When Lucy accepted with a shy smile, something inside the housekeeper broke. Without thinking of the consequences, she whispered, "You have your mother's eyes." The words, almost inaudible, were enough for Augustus to lose his composure. He stood up abruptly, knocking over the chair. "Enough! Sebastian, escort our visitors to the exit. Teresa, in my office now." But before Sebastian could intervene, a strong neigh echoed through the garden. Thunder, the majestic white horse, was approaching the group, attracted by the commotion. The animal, normally calm and obedient only to Augustus, stopped a few meters from Lucy. The girl, fascinated by the horse's beauty, instinctively extended her hand. Ernest tried to stop her, fearing the animal's reaction, but to everyone's surprise, Thunder approached gently, allowing the touch. Augustus observed the scene with a mixture of astonishment and irritation. That horse, which didn't accept caresses even from its current trainer, seemed completely surrendered to the girl's strokes. "Get away from my horse," he ordered, advancing toward Lucy. The abrupt movement startled Thunder, who backed up, agitated. Taking advantage of the confusion, Teresa approached the girl. "Come, dear, I'll show you where the stable is. Thunder seems to have really liked you." Before Augustus could prevent it, Teresa led Lucy away, toward the stables, leaving the men in the garden in a tense impasse. "What do you think you're doing, Ernest? Bringing this girl to my property, putting ideas in my housekeeper's head? I wasn't the one who brought her here. It was you who summoned us," Ernest replied calmly. "As for the ideas in Teresa's head, perhaps she already had them. After all, she was here when Claire left, wasn't she?" The name hit Augustus like a physical blow. His eyes narrowed dangerously. "Don't dare mention that name in my house." "Why? Are you afraid people will discover what really happened? That Claire was—" "Silence!" shouted Augustus, completely losing control. "Sebastian, bring the girl back now." In the stables, Teresa was showing Lucy the various horses on the property. The girl, though enchanted with the animals, stayed especially close to Thunder. "He's so beautiful," she commented, caressing the animal's neck. "And he seems sad," Teresa observed with a lump in her throat. "Animals feel, you know. They perceive when something isn't right." Lucy nodded seriously. "My mother used to say that horses are angels with 4 legs. The mention of her mother made Teresa swallow hard. "Do you remember her?" "Not much, I just have this photo." Lucy took the crumpled photograph from her pocket. "And some stories they told me at the shelter." Teresa took the photo with trembling hands. There was no doubt it was Claire, the young woman who had worked in the house as a kitchen helper before abruptly leaving. Before she could say anything, Sebastian appeared at the stable entrance. "The boss wants the girl back in the garden now." When they returned, the atmosphere had changed drastically. Augustus seemed to have recovered his usual calculating coldness, while Ernest remained firm but visibly concerned. "Teresa, bring a bucket of fresh milk from the pantry," Augustus ordered with a disturbing calmness. The housekeeper hesitated, confused by the request, but obeyed. When she returned with the heavy bucket, Augustus smiled in a way that made everyone present shudder. You said you were hungry, didn't you, girl? That you spent the whole day asking for food around town. Lucy didn't respond, intimidated by the change in the man's tone. Well then, here it is. With a quick movement, Augustus snatched the bucket from Teresa's hands and poured all its contents over Lucy's head. The milk ran down the girl's face, soaking her already worn clothes. She remained paralyzed, eyes wide in shock and humiliation. Ernest moved forward to protect her, but was restrained by Sebastian. That's for you to learn that in Eagle's Ridge, nobody begs. Nobody disturbs the established order. You and this stubborn old man can leave my property now and don't come back. The silence that followed was broken by a furious neigh. Thunder, who had been watching the scene from the other side of the fence, was rearing up agitatedly, stomping his hooves forcefully on the ground. His eyes seemed fixed on Augustus, as if understanding the cruelty of the gesture. Teresa ran to help Lucy, wrapping her in a towel. Ernest, finally freeing himself from Sebastian's grip, picked the girl up in his arms. "You'll regret this, Augustus," he said in a low but firm voice. "Not for what you did to me, but for what you did to this innocent child." As Ernest carried Lucy off the property, a murmur of indignation ran among the employees who had witnessed the scene. Teresa cried silently. Thunder remained agitated, refusing to calm down even when the trainer tried to contain him. Something had changed that day in Eagle's Ridge. A small crack had appeared in the mantle of fear that covered the town, and like any crack in a dam, it threatened to grow until the entire structure collapsed. In the days following the incident at the mansion, a different silence hung over Eagle's Ridge. It was no longer the silence of fear, but the silence that precedes great changes, tense, expectant, loaded with possibilities. Ernest took Lucy home and cared for her with all the affection he could offer. He washed her hair, provided clean clothes, and prepared the best meals his modest pantry allowed. The girl, slowly recovering from the trauma of humiliation, rarely spoke, but her attentive eyes followed the old trainer with a mixture of gratitude and admiration. On the third morning, something unexpected happened. Knocks on the door awoke Ernest before sunrise. Upon opening it, he found Connie from the bakery, accompanied by her husband Anthony, carrying a basket. "We brought fresh bread, cornbread, and some milk," she said, handing over the basket. "It's not much, but—" "It's more than enough," replied Ernest, moved. "But you shouldn't risk yourselves." Anthony, always cautious, looked around before speaking. What he did to the girl was too much, even by his standards. It wasn't the only visit that day. Throughout the morning, other residents appeared discreetly. Teacher Margaret brought children's books and notebooks. Mr. Julian from the general store left a bag of groceries. Even Oliver, the bank manager, sent an envelope with some money through his wife. Meanwhile, at the Hill Mansion, Augustus faced an unprecedented situation. Thunder, his precious purebred horse, refused to eat. The animal, normally docile and obedient, was agitated, nervously neighing and refusing approaches. "What's happening with this animal?" Augustus asked the new trainer, a young man intimidated by his employer's presence. "I don't know, sir. He's been like this since that day, since the incident with the girl." Augustus narrowed his eyes, irritated by the mention of the event. "Nonsense, it's just a horse. It's probably sick. Call the veterinarian." The veterinarian's diagnosis, however, was disconcerting. There was nothing physically wrong with Thunder. Sometimes very sensitive animals can react to changes in the environment, to tensions, the professional suggested, carefully choosing his words. "Are you insinuating that my horse has emotional problems?" Augustus asked sarcastically. "Horses are extremely intuitive animals, Mr. Montgomery. They form bonds, perceive emotions." "Foolishness. Just do your job and cure my horse." But days passed and Thunder's situation didn't improve. The animal was visibly losing weight. Its mane lost its shine, its once lively eyes seemed opaque. Augustus, for whom the horse represented not just a valuable investment but a status symbol, was beginning to get genuinely concerned. It was Teresa who finally dared to state the obvious. "Perhaps he misses the girl," she suggested during breakfast, surprising herself with her own audacity. Augustus stared at her coldly. "Absurd. It's just an animal. Thunder has always been special. You said so yourself. Maybe we should bring the girl to see him, just a visit." "Never," thundered Augustus, hitting the table. "That girl will never set foot on my property again." But the idea, once planted, didn't leave him. That night, alone in his office, Augustus recalled the scene. The girl caressing Thunder, the docile animal under her touch, then the violent reaction when he humiliated her. Was it possible that a horse could judge, feel empathy, take sides? In town, rumors about Thunder's condition spread quickly. For many residents, there was something poetic about the situation. The magnificent animal, a symbol of Augustus's power, withering after witnessing its owner's cruelty against a defenseless child. Ernest, upon hearing the news, felt a pang of concern. He had known Thunder since he was a colt, had trained the animal with patience and respect. Horses have long memories and sensitive hearts, he commented to Lucy as they had dinner. They recognize kindness and cruelty. The girl, who now spoke a little more, asked, "Will he be okay, Mr. Ernest?" "I don't know, little one. Some animals, when they decide to protest, can go to extremes." That conversation awakened in Lucy an idea that she kept to herself. The next morning, taking advantage of Ernest having gone out to buy medicine at the pharmacy, the girl slipped out of the house. Her destination, the Hill Mansion. It wasn't difficult to enter the property. The employees, busy with their tasks, hardly noticed the small figure sneaking around the back. Lucy knew the way to the stables and soon found Thunder separated from the other horses in a special enclosure. The animal, upon seeing her, immediately raised its head. Its eyes, previously apathetic, gained a gleam of recognition. Lucy approached carefully and extended her hand through the fence boards. "Hi, friend," she whispered. "I came to see you." Thunder approached, touching his muzzle to the girl's hand. Lucy smiled, caressing the animal's neck. "You need to eat, you know. You're getting too skinny." As if understanding, the horse moved to the feed trough that remained untouched and began to eat slowly. Lucy continued talking quietly, telling about her new life with Ernest, about the books the teacher had brought, about her hopes of finding more information about her mother. That's how Teresa found her. Half an hour later, the housekeeper remained paralyzed for a moment, divided between the duty to alert Augustus and the desire to protect the girl. She opted for the middle ground. "He'll be furious if he finds you here," she said, approaching cautiously. Lucy turned around, startled, but relaxed upon recognizing Teresa. "I just wanted to see the horse. He wasn't eating." "I know, but now he is," observed Teresa, seeing Thunder calmly chewing his feed. "You'd better go before the boss returns. He went to town but should be back soon." "Why is he so mean?" Lucy asked innocently. Teresa sighed, looking around to make sure they were alone. "He wasn't always like this. There was a time when Augustus Montgomery was just an ambitious man, not a cruel one. But power changes people, little one. Did my mother know him?" The question caught Teresa off guard. Her eyes watered. Yes, she knew him. Very well, in fact. Before she could say more, they heard the sound of a car approaching. Teresa paled. "You need to go. Now!" She quickly guided Lucy through the back of the property, indicating a shortcut that led to the path to town. "Don't come here alone, it's dangerous. If you want to see Thunder again, they'll try to arrange a way." Lucy ran as fast as she could, arriving at Ernest's house breathless a few minutes before the old trainer returned from the pharmacy. She kept that morning's adventure to herself, but slept with a smile on her lips, knowing she had helped the white horse. In the following days, Thunder's recovery was noticed by everyone at the mansion. The animal returned to eating normally. Its coat regained its shine, its behavior became more energetic. Augustus, relieved, attributed the improvement to the medications prescribed by the veterinarian. "See? It was just a passing indisposition," he commented to Teresa, who merely nodded silently. The housekeeper, however, kept a secret. 3 times a week, at carefully chosen times when Augustus was away, she allowed Lucy to visit Thunder. These visits became the highlight of the week for the girl, who developed an increasingly strong bond with the animal. During one of these visits, Teresa finally gathered the courage to address the subject that tormented her. "Lucy, do you know anything about your father?" The girl shook her head. "At the shelter, they said my mother never talked about him, just that he was from here, from Eagle's Ridge." Teresa bit her lip, undecided about how much to reveal. "Your mother, Claire, worked in this house for almost 2 years. She was a beautiful, intelligent young woman. Everyone liked her. Did you know her well?" "Yes, we were friends, despite the age difference. She confided her secrets to me. her dreams, and her fears. Why did she leave? Teresa hesitated. There was a disagreement with the boss. Lucy, perceptive despite her young age, quickly connected the dots. Did Mr. Montgomery know my mother? More than knew her, little one, more than knew her. The conversation was interrupted by Thunder's neigh, who seemed restless. Teresa looked at the clock and became alarmed. It's past time. The boss must be returning. You need to go. As Lucy moved away, Teresa made a decision. That farce had lasted long enough. It was time for the truth to come out, regardless of the consequences. In town, the atmosphere continued to subtly change. The news of Lucy's secret visits to Thunder spread among the mansion's employees and, inevitably, reached the residents' ears. The story gained almost mythical contours. The rejected girl who won the heart of the most valuable horse in the region, the animal that withered in her absence, the mysterious connection between the two. For many, it was a symbol of resistance. If even a horse could defy Augustus Montgomery's tyranny, why couldn't they? Small acts of rebellion began to emerge. Baker Anthony started leaving free bread for needy families. Teacher Margaret organized a book collection campaign to set up a community library. The pharmacist began offering free consultations once a week. Ernest observed these changes with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "It's as if the town were awakening from a long sleep," he commented to Lucy during a walk through the central square. The girl, now more confident and talkative, replied, "Thunder also woke up. He was sad, but now he's happy again." Ernest looked at her, surprised. "How do you know that?" Lucy blushed, realizing she had revealed her secret. I have been visiting him. Mrs. Teresa helps me." The old trainer was momentarily speechless. Then a smile spread across his wrinkled face. "You're brave, little one, but also reckless. If Augustus discovers—" "He won't discover," Lucy replied with typical childhood conviction. "And even if he does, Thunder will protect me." Little did she know that her words would be put to the test much sooner than she imagined. For that same night, after years of complicit silence, Teresa finally confronted Augustus Montgomery with the truth he tried so hard to deny. The annual Eagles Ridge Fair was the most important event on the local calendar. Traditionally, it marked the beginning of the coffee harvest season and brought together producers, merchants, and residents in a great celebration in the central square. It was also the occasion when Augustus Montgomery publicly reaffirmed his dominion over the town, parading mounted on Thunder, receiving tributes from local authorities, and distributing silver coins to selected children. A calculated gesture to appear generous, but that everyone knew was just another demonstration of power. That year, however, something had changed. The eve of the fair was marked by a heated discussion at the Hill Mansion. Teresa, after years of silent submission, finally confronted Augustus with the truth he tried so hard to hide. "The girl has the right to know, sir," said the housekeeper, standing before the desk where Augustus was reviewing documents. "Lucy deserves to know her true story." Augustus slowly raised his eyes, his countenance an impenetrable mask. "I don't know what you're talking about, Teresa, and I suggest you return to your duties." "I'm talking about Claire, about the daughter you denied, about the granddaughter who now wanders through our town." The silence that followed was dense, loaded with unspoken threats. When Augustus finally spoke, his voice was dangerously calm. "You're tired, Teresa. Perhaps it's time for you to retire. I can provide a house in another town, far away from here." "I'm not asking anything for myself," retorted the housekeeper, surprising herself with her courage. "I'm asking for justice for Lucy. You publicly humiliated your own granddaughter." Augustus rose abruptly, his eyes flashing with anger. "Enough! Claire left by her own choice. She refused my help, preferred to raise the bastard alone. If Lucy is my granddaughter, it was by her mother's decision that she grew up without a name or inheritance." "Claire left because you threatened her," exclaimed Teresa, finally letting the tears flow. "Threatened to take her daughter away, to raise the child as if she were an orphan of both father and mother. She fled to protect Lucy, not to deny her." The truth, finally spoken aloud, hung in the air like an inescapable accusation. Augustus looked away, disturbed by memories he had long tried to suppress. "You don't understand," he murmured, more to himself than to Teresa. "My reputation, what would they say? What? A man of my position, having a daughter who got pregnant out of wedlock by some common laborer. Jerome wasn't just any laborer, Teresa corrected gently. He was an honorable man who loved your daughter, who wanted to marry her. A nobody, vociferated Augustus. Without possessions, without education, without a future. Claire deserved better. I was planning a suitable marriage with some farmer's son, someone of our standing. Teresa shook her head, compassionate of that man's moral blindness. And now? Lucy is here. She's your granddaughter, whether you accept it or not. The Montgomery blood runs in her veins. Augustus sat back down, suddenly exhausted. What do you want me to do, Teresa? Publicly acknowledge her, announce to the entire town that I drove away my own granddaughter, that I humiliated her by pouring milk over her. I want you to be fair, to give her what is rightfully hers, a name, a family. The next morning, the day of the fair, Augustus remained isolated in his quarters until the last moment. When he finally came down, impeccably dressed as always, his face revealed nothing of the inner torment consuming him. In town, the expectation was palpable. The square was decorated with colorful flags, typical food and craft stores lined the sides. The bandstand had been decorated to receive the local band. But the real center of attention was the space reserved for the arrival of Augustus Montgomery and his majestic white horse. Ernest and Lucy arrived early, against the old trainer's wishes. He would have preferred to keep the girl away from Augustus's eyes, but Lucy had insisted so much on seeing Thunder at the fair that he hadn't had the heart to deny her. We'll just stay a little while, promised the girl, firmly holding Ernest's hand. I just want to see Thunder all decorated. At noon sharp, a murmur ran through the crowd. Augustus Montgomery was approaching, mounted on Thunder. The white horse was magnificent, with worked leather harnesses and an impeccably combed mane, but there was something different about the animal, a restlessness, a subtle resistance to the rider's commands. Look how beautiful he is, exclaimed Lucy, releasing Ernest's hand and moving a few steps forward. Thunder, as if he had heard the girl's voice, turned his head in her direction. His eyes met Lucy's, and to the amazement of all present, the animal abruptly stopped, refusing to advance. Move, ordered Augustus, pulling the reins with more force than usual. But Thunder remained motionless, focused on the small figure of Lucy among the crowd. A tense silence fell over the square. Never in all those years had anyone witnessed Augustus Montgomery's magnificent horse disobey a command. It was as if an invisible and immutable order was being broken before everyone's eyes. Augustus, feeling the gaze of the entire town upon him, gave a more energetic touch with the spurs. Thunder reacted with a furious neigh, rearing up violently. Caught by surprise, Augustus couldn't maintain his position in the saddle and fell heavily onto the packed dirt of the square. A collective gasp echoed among those present. Many brought their hands to their mouths, horrified. No one dared move to help the fallen man, fearing his fury. Lucy, however, didn't share that fear. Before Ernest could stop her, the girl ran toward Augustus. "Are you okay, sir?" she asked, extending a small hand to help him up. Augustus looked at that hand, then at the girl's face. The same almond-shaped eyes as Claire, the same expression of genuine concern. For a brief moment, something seemed to break inside him, but soon the mask of coldness fell back over his countenance. "Get out of my way," he grunted, pushing away the girl's hand and getting up by himself. The abrupt gesture made Lucy lose her balance and fall sitting on the ground. Tears welled up in the child's eyes, not from physical pain but from rejection. It was enough for Thunder. The horse, which had been observing the scene up close, advanced with a powerful neigh, placing itself between Augustus and the girl. The animal reared again, forcing the man to back away. "Control that animal," shouted the mayor, hiding behind a group of security guards. But no one dared approach. Thunder, normally so gentle and obedient, seemed possessed by a protective fury, circling Lucy like a living wall. Ernest finally managed to break through the circle of spectators and approached cautiously. To everyone's surprise, Thunder allowed the old trainer to approach the girl. "It's all right, little one," murmured Ernest, helping Lucy to her feet. "Let's go home." But before they could move away, something extraordinary happened. From the back of the crowd emerged Peter, the baker, carrying a basket of fresh bread. Without saying a word, he approached and placed the basket at Lucy's feet. "For you and your grandfather," he said simply before backing away. Right after, Margaret, the teacher, came forward with a storybook. "For your lessons," she offered with a gentle smile. One by one, residents of Eagles Ridge began to approach. The seamstress brought a new dress, the shoemaker a pair of sandals, the florist a small bouquet. Simple gestures, but loaded with meaning, of recognition, of acceptance, of silent challenge to the established order. Augustus watched the scene with a mixture of anger and incredulity. His power, built over decades, was crumbling before his eyes, and the agent of this destruction wasn't a powerful rival, an influential politician, or an ambitious businessman. It was a frail child, with worn clothes and enormous eyes. "Stop this," he ordered, his voice echoing across the square. "This girl is nothing. She is nobody." "This girl," said a firm voice behind him, "is your granddaughter." Teresa had stepped forward, positioning herself beside Lucy. Her face, normally so submissive, now displayed an unshakable determination. "Daughter of Claire, your daughter. The girl you expelled from this town when she became pregnant by the man she loved. The child you denied even before she was born." A growing murmur spread through the crowd. Pieces of a long-forgotten puzzle began to fit together in the minds of the older ones. The sudden departure of Claire, Augustus's daughter, the rumors about her romance with Jerome, the horse trainer, the young man's disappearance soon after, Augustus's transformation, becoming even more bitter and controlling after those events. "Lies!" shouted Augustus, but his voice no longer carried the same authority. There was doubt in his eyes, shame in his posture. Ernest, who until then had remained silent, stepped forward. From his pocket he withdrew an envelope yellowed by time. "Claire sent me this before leaving," he said, carefully opening the envelope. "A letter to be delivered to you should anything happen to her. I kept it all these years, hoping that one day you would see beyond your pride. But now it's too late." He extended the letter to Lucy, not to Augustus. "This belongs to you now, little one. It's the story of your mother told by herself." The girl took the paper with reverence, as if holding something precious and fragile. Her eyes scanned the lines written in delicate calligraphy, but she was still too young to fully comprehend the meaning of those words. "My mother, did she love my father?" she asked, raising her eyes to Ernest. "More than anything," replied the old man with a choked voice. "Jerome was a good man, hard-working, honest, kind. Your grandfather didn't consider him worthy of his daughter, but Claire knew the truth." Augustus stepped forward, his face contorted in an indecipherable expression. "Give me that letter," he demanded, extending his hand to Lucy. The girl instinctively backed away, pressing the paper against her chest. Thunder, still vigilant, moved to her side like a protective shadow. It was at this moment that something unexpected happened. Sebastian, Augustus's faithful henchman for so many years, stepped forward and placed himself between his employer and the girl. "Enough, Mr. Montgomery," he said firmly. "I was there when you expelled your own daughter. I helped drive Jerome away, threatening him so that he would never return. I've carried that guilt for years. I won't allow you to hurt this child too." Augustus backed away, as if he had been slapped. The betrayal of his most loyal employee was the final blow to his fragile empire of intimidation. The silence that followed was broken by a childish voice. Lucy had approached Augustus again, her large eyes fixed on the man's face. "The letter says that my mother always hoped that one day you could forgive her," she said simply. "She never stopped loving you, even after everything." Something broke in Augustus's expression. An invisible wall, built over decades of bitterness and wounded pride, crumbled before those innocent words. His shoulders slumped, his face visibly aged. "Claire," he murmured, and for the first time in many years, the residents of Eagles Ridge saw tears in the eyes of that man they judged incapable of any genuine emotion. Lucy, moved by an impulse she herself didn't understand, extended her hand and touched Augustus's arm. "Are you my grandfather?" she asked with the brutal honesty of children. Augustus looked at that small hand on his arm, then at the girl's face, the face of Claire as a child, the same eyes, the same determined chin. "Yes," he finally answered, his voice almost inaudible. "Yes, I am." Days later, Eagles Ridge was still commenting on the extraordinary events of that fair. How Augustus Montgomery, after decades of veiled tyranny, had publicly acknowledged Lucy as his granddaughter. How the powerful farmer, on his knees in the packed dirt of the square, had asked forgiveness of the girl and, by extension, to the memory of his daughter. Even more surprising were the changes that followed. Augustus resigned from the presidency of the business association and from the indirect control of the local bank. He announced the creation of an educational foundation in Claire's name, destined to guarantee studies for underprivileged children of the region. He donated land for the construction of a community hospital and, to general amazement, invited Ernest to return to work on his property, no longer as an employee but as a partner in horse breeding. As for Thunder, the magnificent white horse began to divide his time between the farm stable and the yard of the house where Lucy now lived with Ernest, a new, larger and more comfortable house, a gift from a repentant grandfather who was trying belatedly to correct his mistakes. On Sunday afternoons, it became common to see Augustus, now visibly thinner and less imposing, walking through the square hand in hand with his granddaughter. Sometimes Teresa accompanied them, carrying a picnic basket. Occasionally, Thunder also joined the group, following Lucy like a faithful shadow without reins or harnesses. Augustus's transformation didn't erase decades of hurts and resentments, it's true. Many in town still looked at him with distrust, unable to forget the years of oppression. But the change was real and profound, not just in him, but in all of Eagles Ridge. People began to smile again in the streets, to talk in the squares, to help each other without fear of reprisals. On one of those Sunday afternoons, while watching Lucy play with other children in the square garden, Augustus confided to Ernest, "I thought I was building a legacy of power. In reality, I was just building a prison of fear, for myself and for everyone around me." The old trainer nodded, understanding. "It's never too late to tear down the walls we ourselves have built." "Would Claire have forgiven me?" asked Augustus, his voice trembling with a vulnerability he had never before allowed anyone to witness. Ernest looked at Lucy, who was laughing as she ran after Thunder. "She already forgave you through her daughter. Look at Lucy. There's no bitterness in her, only love. It's the greatest gift Claire could have left for you." That night, after taking Lucy to sleep in her new room in Ernest's house, Augustus climbed alone to the top of the hill where his mansion stood. From there, he contemplated Eagles Ridge illuminated under the moonlight. The town seemed different now, more alive, more free, or perhaps it was he who saw with different eyes. The transformation that a child and a horse had triggered was greater than anyone could have predicted. It wasn't just the story of a powerful man who rediscovered his humanity, but of an entire community that awakened from a long nightmare of submission and fear. Eagles Ridge, which for so long had lived under the shadow of fear, now took flight toward a future of dignity and hope. And it all began with the simple and courageous gesture of a girl who, even when rejected, extended her hand to help the man who had humiliated her. In his stable, Thunder rested peacefully, as if knowing his mission was fulfilled. The magnificent white animal, who had refused to be ridden by a tyrant, now allowed a child to occasionally sleep in his stall, nestled against his strong neck. Because in the end, even a purebred horse knew how to recognize the difference between power and true strength. The end. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Lucy and Thunder has touched your hearts. To continue this journey of emotions, we've prepared a special playlist with equally engaging stories. Find it here, clicking on the left. If you like this narrative, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like to the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and the power of redemption. Don't miss our upcoming content. We're looking forward to reading your comments.